Peace, family. I'm back again, and today we are going to investigate about Africa. And y'all heard about all the lies about Africa and how it came to be. You know what I'm saying? How these niggas don't know nothing about themselves. And we're going to start investigating, okay, why these niggas don't know nothing about themselves and created confusion road. And the whole Africa, as you know, is corrupted by instability. They never come together. You know what I'm saying? They hate each other in the same country and everything. They always divided. Then they got the religion and niggers that you know can't live without religion, stuck in the country, and then there's the other half that don't want religion in many countries. You know what I'm saying? And they all stuck with each other. Why? Because they didn't create this. They are a new creation. They are the new creation from Yahweh and Jesus and Allah and all these names that these gods they they speak to you. Okay, and apparently the white man created Africa. Okay, because there was no Africa before the reset or nothing. So they created Africa. Okay, they created the lines, the divisions, the countries. Okay, they named them, and as I told you, they copied it from some other map that we find the old map of Africa that was in America. You know what I'm saying? And boom, you got Africa all of a sudden in the 20th century. They split the continent and call it Africa. All these niggas living there and in conflict, perpetual conflicts, people, because they ain't the same people or nothing. And they got trapped with different people. You know, imagine you got trapped with dudes that, with niggas that don't look like you, don't have the same tradition and culture than you know what I'm saying? So they always in conflict. It's always been like that. Because they didn't create their own countries, people. These are all slaves. They were subdivided by this other force. Yeah, we're going to read about it. We're going to break it all down to understand the confusion because there is nobody in the world that is more confused than the African about his nationality, about his origins. You see? So y'all need to hold on. Need to plug this. Y'all need to understand that these dudes, they were all confined. And they were all made by the new system. They were all created by the Yahweh system. You know what I'm saying? From the beginning, and they were meant to be a certain way, to carry certain agendas. You know what I'm saying? But what I find out after my whole research about Africa, I know Africa. You know what I'm saying? And we find out that there's no creation that came from them in there. They were created, including the countries were created, and these people were just conglomerating there and forced to be there and given these nationalities, and that's that. That's how they started. They were not. They didn't, did it by their own will. They didn't do it by their own history. They didn't do it by their own past. It has nothing to do with the ancestors or nothing. Yeah, it's been the aliens that came in that subdivided them, created this thing called Africa. And we're gonna see how they did it by reading their own scripts, man. Yeah. Picture is a map of the partition of Africa, photo courtesy of Stuart Drinking via Flickr, Commons, whatever. The scramble for Africa began with the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 85 people, and ended by the early 20th century. During this period, European colonizers partitioned Africa into spheres of influence, colonies, and various segments. They partitioned land from European capitals with limited knowledge of the geography, history, and ethnic composition of Africa. See that? See who did it? And they didn't even know the geography of Africa. They didn't know the ethnic composition. They didn't know nothing. They just, made the lines. In many African countries, a significant portion of their population belongs to groups split by colonial partitions. You see that? How come they never speak about that? Because that is what they always fighting. This is what left them fighting forever. You got these niggers killing each other forever. This was all done by design, and they never speak about that. That's why they fight, because they didn't create these partitions. During the onset of colonization, European powers preferentially dealt with African local leaders, and chieftaincies. Colonial powers employed underhand mechanisms in territorial acquisition and boundary making, such as deceit, fraud, intimidation, and bribery. You see that? Moreover, colonial powers utilized various techniques to influence African leaders and obtain resource-rich land. The Berlin Conference legitimized the partition of Africa. See that? That's where they came to be. The Berlin Conference, people. All Yhwh stuff. Colonialists designed regional maps without providing any notification to the local African rulers. They stabbed them in the back and made treaties among colonial powers to avoid resource competition. However, many errors were made due to their superficial knowledge of the continent and undeveloped maps in existence. You see that? So you got all these foreigners, you got all these invaders, you got all Yhwh troops, you got the religion, you got all these dudes. They sit in a conference and they decided the fate of Africans and decided to divide the lands the way that's gonna suit them to keep the resources, with the chiefs that they conquered from the African chiefs that were in their pockets, you know what I'm saying? So they made a treaty and everything. They decided what land and what they're gonna keep, and made the lines, and they getting the resources from this deal. You know what I'm saying? These niggas have no input on that. They have no, they were all both bamboozled. Yeah, they have no control of nothing there. As you can see, they were created artificially by aliens. You see that? This is why Africa is a piece of shit and nothing goes right, because it's all artificial. See that? They're going to talk to you about African history. You're going to talk about African heroes and this and that. They didn't build nothing. They didn't build Africa. They didn't build it. Who built it? This is the same white man 20th century built damn Africa, man, and divided and gave them what they have today. So what is going on? Is this a lab or what? Because these niggas can't go back to nothing but that. Lord Salisbury, the British Prime Minister in 1906, people demonstrated this arbitrary and under-informed approach at the signing of the Anglo-French Convention on Niger boundary in 1906, when he said, We, the British and the French, have been engaged in drawing lines upon maps where no white man's foot ever trod. We have been giving away mountains and rivers and lakes to each other, only hindered by the small impediments that we never knew exactly where the mountains and the rivers and lakes were. This statement helps us to understand how colonial powers designed artificial African boundaries without knowledge of the land and local communities. You see that? I'm going to read again. The statement helps us to understand how colonial powers designed artificial African boundaries. Told you, it's all artificial, without knowledge of the land and local communities. See that? It's all made by the damn invaders that gave them the design and everything of what Africa is, what countries and everything. European powers completed cartographic surveys of territories through boundary commissions from 1900 to 1930, which was when, you see that, they were setting up everything for the banking system, because it started in 1930, people. Which allowed total control of colonies. However, these focus, see that, they created Africa and divided lines and everything to control it. Since then, and they control that place. They even tell you in their own script, man. However, this focused solely on land control and disregarded the impacts of partitioning on ethnic groups. Artificial borders split many closely related ethnic groups into different colonial regions. In Horn of Africa, for instance, they split Somalis into French Somaliland, British Somalia, Italian Somalia, Ethiopian Somalia, and the Somali region of northern Kenya. Such colonial borders have massive effects on Somali people who share the common culture, a similar way of life, and the same religion, but live as separate citizens of Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. Similarly, after the Afar people of Ethiopia were split amongst Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti, and Anua and Nua were split between Ethiopia and South Sudan. They split and split and split these niggers, man, into 1,000 pieces. Following an artificial border design, African communities could not move freely, boom, in their daily activities. And nomadic practices such which inflicted economic hardship and social inconvenience, changing lifestyle and structural systems of African communities negatively, affected their traditional life, administrative structures, and economic well-being. These deprived African borderland communities of economic opportunity by hindering their movements and forcing them to live differently. You see that? Why they created these lines and these countries? Then the traditional life, for example, many Africans are pastoralist and nomadic people that need vast land for grazing and water. However, artificial borders limited borderland people to herding on limited land and forced them into resource competition and confrontation due to limited mobility with other borderland peoples. You see how they create the prison? You see how they create these countries and how they create these prisons to keep you inside? and how they knew that that's what's going to happen there, that you're going to be borderland, and you cannot move, and you're going to, you're going to lose your economy, you're going to be a slave, because then you have to compete with the dudes that they closed you inside the line, and that's it. You can't get out. And before they had the whole Africa to move around, it was all Ethiopia. But all of a sudden, in 20th century, these niggas have no history, these niggas have no ancestry, and they got divided by these dudes, these other dudes that came with Yahweh's religion and everything, baptized them and divided them into these lands and kept them there trapped. Besides improperly designed borders, European colonial powers employed divide and rule. Boom. Direct rule and assimilation policies which forced the loss of social norms, identity, and social order for Africans. You see that? So the Europeans forced the stuff on them, the tradition on them, told them what to eat, you know what I'm saying, what food they should eat, what drink they should drink, did away with their language, did away with all, forced them to learn English, you know what I'm saying, did away with that, called them people that speak their language ignorant until they stop speaking, until it disappears, you know what I'm saying? And now they don't know nothing. Moreover, these policies instigated conflicts among local people, dividing them even further and consequently strengthening colonial power, of course. Doing so helped gradually develop hostile relations among borderland people, and post-independent African governments and political elites used this division for political means. You see that? How it is all a lab in this African continent is nothing but a lab that was made in 20th century, people. Some political elites in Africa affiliate more along ethnic lines and play crucial roles in fueling tensions and escalating political disenfranchising. For instance, the Low Nuer on South Sudan and Jikani Nuer of Ethiopia are the same ethnic group and live along the Ethiopia-South Sudan border, yet they are considered as two distinct ethnic groups with different nationalities and have developed hostility to research competition. Despite the effects of colonization, see that how these niggers allowed, yeah, an outsider to colonize them and even fight each other over the competition for resources, despite the effects of colonization and artificial borders on borderland communities, African political leaders have not alleviated these problems, by rather use them as a political instrument, people. It never stops, it never will, it seems. Improper border design and partitioning of ethnic groups have contributed to underdevelopment and instability in African states. You see how it was made all from the beginning to fail. It was all made to fail, people. That's why Africa failed and is a failure. In addition, the disconnect between center periphery relation demonstrated by the exclusion by some African states of borderland communities or in economic development exacerbate the challenges. The lack of economic, social, and political development, you see that, and limited upwards mobility exposed borderland communities to a number of human security problems. That's how bad it is, including widespread poverty. You see that? Widespread poverty, people. Lack of infrastructure, limited education, and cross-border intergroup conflicts. You see that? The improper design of African borders and use of these designs as political instruments have increased instability and underdevelopment for the borderland communities across the continent. It is a lab, people. It's a complete lab they made and called it Africa. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Okay? So I don't really see no African coming around here telling me how we feel proud to be an African when he didn't build that shit. The ancestors didn't build this shit. They were forced into the shit. They were paying tributary. They just split them and did business with them like they merchandise. Okay, there's nothing. You were all slaves. That's why they have the history of slave. They keep telling everybody they slaves. Well, I can see you as slave because even your countries were created by slavery, by your slave master. And this is why you believe everything your slave master tell you. That the earth is spinning in space, that Yahweh is real, you know what I'm saying? And then they teach you all that lie of Kemet and Egypt and all that crap that they made as well in the 20th century. Don't forget, these people control the whole, what they call Africa there. They put all this shit together, including Egypt, including Kemet, including North, East, West Africa, all of them, they divided, they renamed them. These niggas don't represent nothing because they just divided them and they didn't even know nothing about ethnicity and who belongs where or what who do what. They just divide land and next minute they were all mobilized, okay, within the lines, and they have to work to pay tax, and they lost their life that they had, that they will be moving out, making business, moving around. They had a better life and better future. But now they were trapped in these lines. They call countries, they made Nigeria, they made Gabon, they made Angola, they made all these countries in Africa. You know what I'm saying? So Ghana, all of them, okay, they created them with different people inside and everything. They just closed the place and said, "Look, man, this is called that, this is called that, this is called that. Nobody can pass from that line, and that's that. And you gotta pay tax, okay?" So that's what, man. This is what Africa is. In case you didn't know, in case you think it's got some ancient history that was passed on. No, there's nothing ancient in there. So it's Africa now, I know, is a result of reset. Okay, the place that was most destroyed and the most resettled, and even the people there now, I start thinking, are they even, from here? Are they just lab things that because they can't go back to nothing. And how these newcomers come in 20th century, and establish their lands and tell them what they are and everything. You are a Nigerian, you are a Ghanaian, give them nationalities, give them new names and everything. Yeah, establish them. How the hell this happens? And they never revolt against this. They never teach this at school to their kids that we being owned out. You know what I'm saying? That's the real slavery we being through. No, they're not going to talk about that at all. But they're going to come to America talk about slave trade. What? Your land, it's all a slave trade. It's been slave trading since this 20th century. They said that they set up the whole Africa, and you are their merchandise. So how are you worried about the so-called slave trade? Yeah, it makes no sense. When the whole Africa was slave traded from the 20th century, they came in and they made all these Negro slaves. They all slaves because they made the whole damn countries, man, and renamed them and everything. Can you go to Europe and rename the white man and tell him, what his name is, Hell no. Nobody went to this. Only these Africans, man. How do you explain that? And they hate to speak about this. They hate to speak about the reset. And they got all these professors because Africans are rounded up by professors. No wise men, no grandma, no big mama, no wise man to tell them their own history or nothing. Yeah, all they have is this museums and the professors, yeah, half black, well, half black professors telling them who they are. Why? Because they have no history. Okay, and they're now trying to tell somebody else that, oh, we are all Africans and this and that. Who created the whole thing? Were not you, were not your ancestors. No, your ancestors never told you that every Negro in the world is an African. No, it's the same dude that divided Africa and created your country, created you, because you didn't create nothing there. They created you and your country, and everything you believe in and everything you do is for the benefit of these people that created you. So, you know, this is why I don't go to the rooms, talk to them Africans and debate. Are you kidding? Debates and all that. Only if you don't know their history. You don't know who they are. Like they don't. Yeah, and then they be there trying to convince you that there's something, but they don't know who they are. Because African is not what they are. That's what the invader called them, including Yahweh and these other churches. They called them Africans and gave them lands. And I mean, uh, gave them country names and divided them by these lines and called them and control which means they control them. They decide everything in there in Africa. I told you, these dudes decide everything in Africa that the Africans themselves don't exist in these lives. They just don't exist. They just there to take orders. And they don't even know who they are or nothing. They just regurgitate what the invader told them. Okay. Oh, we Africans. We all Africans. We all Africans. You know, brother. We all Africans. You all came from Africa. Come on, man. Come on, man. Africa is the birth, is the birth of the civilization. But who created Africa? It's all an agenda, people. They got it. We showed you, man. We showed you them putting together them pyramids, putting together them Egypt in 20th century, and then telling you it's all history. Yeah, it's all deception in this land called Africa. Everything there is a deception. Can't believe nothing they tell you about Egypt or nothing. And even Egypt, what's so great about that? And how can it help you? Hmm? How? And the Africans don't even identify with the bullshit because Egypt is full of bad things, people. In the world, immoral stuff like Yahweh. A lot of immoral stuff is going down in this because Kemet and all this, they have a priest as well. It's all religious shit. Yeah, they all go down to religion because they're gonna have a priest and they're gonna have these wicked laws. They're gonna have all the stuff that is against you, against your freedom. You know what I'm saying? So that's all, man. Love you all. Keep the instructions. Peace.